Okay, welcome everybody. This is Kelly Katalinas. I'm a branch manager with Fairway Independent Mortgage based out of Fairfax, Virginia. And joining me today is Rob Chevez with the Caza Group with Keller Williams. And Rob has graciously agreed to let us interview him. He's got a lot of good topics, and we wanted to bring um, information out to our real estate community. We wanted to start a success accelerator series where we're basically bringing interviews once a month to our real estate partners, because we really do believe that sharing best practices will get you where you need to go. I've been in sales 35 plus years. I know a lot of people on the call have been in sales a long time. There's so many different ways to achieve your goals. And I just think it's really important if you can kind of talk to a lot of people out there, figure out what works for them, and maybe incorporate some of those things into your own business strategies. So Rob has a great story to tell. I'm going to start the questions off with some things to talk about his journey and how he really got into real estate and real estate investing, and how he really used that real estate investing content to help attract more people to his sphere of influence and build a bigger and larger and more successful business over time. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob. And Rob, if you can just give us a little bit of background about yourself, how you got started in real estate investing, and then how things kind of moved from there.
Sure. I'll give a high level of where we are right now, and then what the journey looked like. So I've been licensed as an agent since 2007, but it was purely by accident, really. Today, and I'll go into that in a little bit, but today I run the team called the Caza Group. It's actually currently made up of 5 different teams. So we believe in owning hyper local geographic markets. We did 150 million in volume last year. And what we do is we have location leaders that run hyper local teams to serve the community at a higher level. And that genesis came about because it is kind of unique. There's not a lot of people that do that. Genesis came about because I was very entrepreneurial, just right out the gate. I was like, I want to start a business when I was right out of college. And I did. I started a recruiting business. I ran that with my best friend for 7 years. And then in 2005, I asked him to buy me out so that I could pursue real estate investing full time. Because in between those 7 years, as I was making money as a recruiter, I read some books that really affected me and started changing the way I was thinking about the world and how to approach it. And those books, many of those books talked about real estate and real estate investing, and how if you do it right and if you do it early enough, it could set you financially free. And for whatever reason, that resonated with me. I love the thought that I could do what I want when I want with the people I love and not be confined to a desk or being a slave to a wage. And so that seed was planted in my mind, and then I started pursuing knowledge around that. And so by the time 2005 rolled around, I was full blown in love with real estate. And my wife and I, at that point, maybe we purchased 6 or 7, 8 properties. We were really buy and hold investors, right? We were like, hey, let's buy these things, let's hold them forever and never sell them. And then 2005 rolled around, and obviously we know that was the height of the market then. And I knew we were in the height of the market only because I'd gone through a tech recession before. And but I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a clue. I didn't have anything. I just had a gut feeling that that we wanted to pursue this avenue of real estate so we could create financial freedom. We didn't know what that really meant. Didn't really have a formula. It was just more like a feeling, right? Really dumb, to be honest with you, Kelly, because there was no plan. But sometimes intuition and gut can lead you down that right path. You should listen to it. I've learned to listen to it more. And so we started off as investors, right? And in 2007, I purely got my real estate license only because I was giving a lot of referrals to an agent. And the agent said, hey, I can't pay you a referral fee unless you're licensed, technically, legally. And we wanted to comply with the law. So we said, okay, let me get my license. And you have to hang your license somewhere. And I looked up the nearest brokerages around me, and I interviewed at, traditional brokerages. And then I ran across this little one called Keller Williams Realty. And I remember I'd seen a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. And I had read the book, and I was like, I don't know who this guy, Gary Keller, is, but he's really smart. This is a book about business. It's not a book about real estate. It's a business book. You could literally take the word real estate agent out and replace it with any service-based business. And so it resonated with me because I'd run a business before that didn't have a system and didn't have a model. So I yearned for a system and model. So that's how I got my license, Kelly. And then, I made a transition into real estate, being a real estate agent, but there was that took maybe 3 or 4 years before that transition occurred. And there was very thoughtful reasons why I made that transition. And I could certainly share some of that, but I'll let you ask the questions.
Well, I have a lot. Okay. So I know you founded Grid, and
Yes.
I would love for you to explain what Grid is and kind of how that evolved, right? You started with this idea of real estate investing, formulated this Grid group. What did that attract, and how did that exponentially translate into building your business?
Yeah. So as powerful question, right? I started realizing probably after 3 years of full-time investing that there's really these two sides, right? You've got this earned income side, which is like fixing and flipping and wholesaling, and everybody's so attracted to that side of the business. And then there's the other side, which is building passive income through asset ownership, right? And what happened was as I was buying, fixing, and flipping houses, I felt like I was essentially killing the golden goose, right? Because I was selling the asset for money. I needed cash to essentially fund my life and my family and all the rest. And it hurt every time I sold a really good asset. And I was like, I think I want to almost shift the model a little bit, where instead of feeling like I'm essentially slaying this like golden goose, right? What if I just help somebody on the traditional side buy more effectively, buy like an investor would buy, and sell like an investor would sell? I had all this knowledge because we were, renovating 20 to 30 houses a year. And so we had accumulated all this knowledge. And so I said, I think I would feel, because ultimately, just to remind you that the goal for me was to build passive income, right, through owning assets. And so every time I sold one of those things through a fix and flip, I felt like I was not living the life that I was meant to live. And so, and that's how I knew at the time how to generate income. I had to sell stuff, right? So I was like, well, what if I'm an agent, I sell stuff, I won't feel guilty about it. I feel really good because I help other people do it more effectively. And then I will take the additional dollars and buy assets. And so the group came about, to answer your question specifically, because I knew that if I was going to start pursuing that path, that I needed to build more relationships. I needed to meet more people. I had learned this concept early on in sales, that the more people that you talk to, the more seeds that you sow, the bigger your list, the more money you make and as a sales professional, right? So if I could add a lot of value, if I add value just to one person, well, my income's limited. But if I can add value to 20 people and I could do it all at the same time, right? So now I'm leveraging, the fact that people are coming in to learn something, then I can speed up my cycles, right? And so that's what I did. I wanted to always lead with value. And so I was like, how could I attract more people to me? How could I create value? How could I help other people achieve this journey that I'm on of creating financial freedom? I was like, I've learned a lot over the last, because up until that point, I'd been part-time investing for about 7 to 8 years and then full-time for
Mhm.
about 3 years. So I was like, I've learned a lot in this process. And what could I give here? And so that's what I did. I just essentially created a curriculum to guide people through that process. And it was honestly just from wanting to meet more people. And so that's how it started. I had no idea like where it would lead. I just wanted to make friends, right? With
Mhm.
people that were also on that same journey. So
So are we looking at this by default or by design, or a little bit of both?
well, it was, I had a hypothesis,
Okay.
right? So the hypothesis was, well, I'll reverse engineer the math. I'll give you the exact science behind it, right?
Okay.
I knew that for every 8 to 10 people that I would talk to about real estate,
Mhm.
and I did when I would do that consistently, that I could generate 200 to 240,000 in gross commission income, right?
Mhm.
And I had been tracking my numbers, and I had kind of learned that basic little formula. And I said, well, what if I somehow increased the amount of people that I talked to?
Mhm.
How could I efficiently do it? And I said, well, when you're meeting one person at a time, it's one-to-one communication. What if I could
Mhm.
amplify my voice and create this kind of like one-to-many relationship?
Mhm.
And I knew that I needed a certain amount of people every single week to talk to.
Mhm.
And sometimes it was difficult to hit that number. So I said, well, what if I could do a seminar, essentially, a
Mhm.
meeting that would bring 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 people. And I just led with value.
Mhm.
But I would be able to talk about my craft, and I would indirectly be able to have a conversation, let people know that this is what I do. I'm a real estate
Mhm.
agent that happens to know a lot about investing. And
Mhm.
so I had a hypothesis that would
Mhm.
work, right? And
Mhm.
then, fast forward a couple of years, it was just so clear, so evident. I'm like, oh my God, like you just see where all those relationships led over time. Um, and it really helped start and become a vital part of our business.
So when you talk about um, reaching out to your sphere of influence,
Mhm,
okay, and you're doing it in a measured fashion,
mhm,
you're doing it with prescriptive content.
mhm,
There's a specific level of content that you want to put out there. Um, Talk about how you're using that content exponentially, right? So you're going
mhm,
to put that content out there. You're going to attract people to hear and come meet you, create a
mhm,
relationship with you and your group. But then you're also staying in touch with them, right?
mhm,
You're
mhm,
constantly following up. You're having them build that base of communication, and obviously looking to grow each of that content.
mhm,
So I think specifically what I would love to hear about, and I think other realtors on the call would like to hear about, is, the shift in direction, the adding value, the measured approach, talk about consistency, frequency of
mhm,
communication,
mhm,
types of communication, and any kind of, you know, I know you've been doing this a long time.
mhm,
Okay. Let's also hear about what might not have worked, like what to stay
mhm.
away from, maybe, and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Um, so when I hear you say that, what comes to mind is, how do you create a system of communication so that it happens over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? And which is a challenge for most real estate agents, right? We are by definition can be very distracted, right? We see shiny objects out there all the time. We see different things that people are doing, um, and what I learned, and as I was studying some of the best in the business, I realized that all of them had a rhythm and a system for communicating with their database, with their relationships, with their SOI, which meant that you needed to have a place to accumulate all
Mhm.
those relationships, right? You needed an actual database where there was names and phone numbers and email addresses. And that was kind of like a basic level one, which I know most agents don't have. Like if they wanted to scale and build a business, like they need that. So, first I had to, meet somebody, and then I had to have the discipline to actually put them in the database. And that, by the way, was not easy, right? I know it's not easy for agents because I train agents all the time, and I know it wasn't easy for me. But it's important, it's necessary to do. And so then once I kind of did that, I said, okay, well, I need to have a systematic way to communicate with people every 15 days. And so what I would do is I would create this content, and then this content can be repurposed, whether it's video along with just email. And then that I would do it in the beginning, right? So in the beginning, it's I do, then it's we do, and then you do, meaning I do it all. And then you hire somebody to be your leverage, and we do it together, and I train you to do it. And then you're going to do it, right? That's the natural rhythm that occurs. And so in the beginning, I had to do this. I had to on the first of the month, send out the email to everybody that had come in my database. And then over time, I was able to hire an assistant that I said, this is the rhythm, first and the 15th, first and the 15th, first and the 15th, right? And it's going to go out no matter what. It's the first, it goes out. It's the 15th, it goes out. And I created a natural rhythm with this content that we create with Grid, because it was the first Tuesday of every month. And it was no matter what, the first Tuesday of every month, I have to do this meeting. And I can't not do it, because what would happen is people would sign up in advance. So it was almost kind of forced accountability, because I would have 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 people show up. And I'm well, I have to go. Even if I didn't want to go, if I wasn't feeling well, I had to go. And I'm proud to say that we've never missed a meeting in 13 years. So think about that, the level of consistency,
awesome.
Right? And along the way, I brought in my business partner, Mark Beckett, who I met in that meeting, in my Grid group, and who has covered for us, and I've covered for him over time. So we've kept it consistent. But the most important thing is this developing a system of communication that occurs. So you create what we call long tail content, whether it's video or maybe you prefer writing, and then it gets just chopped up. Right. And in the beginning, you chop it up, right? And you feed it out there. But eventually you have a team of people that are taking all that content and they're posting it. And, of course, as all the social platforms have evolved, it's you need full-time people to just kind of keep up with that stuff. Right.
Right.
So that was, believe it or not, a very first level secret sauce. Of making sure that you just stay consistent with doing the activities required, and then just holding a standard that you can never miss it, ever, right? And what happens is that compounds over time, and the compounding over time produces leads, appointments, relationships. Right?
Sure. So getting back to the real estate investing, okay, you talk about, you train a lot of real estate agents, obviously, but how do you advise agents to start positioning themselves as real estate investing advisors or resources if they're not active investors themselves yet? So there's a fear factor there, right?
Sure.
They want to come across as an expert, but they don't feel like one, perhaps.
So the first thing is they have to start pouring into themselves, right? They first have to pour into themselves, meaning they need to read, they need to learn, they need to go to different, whether it's Grid events or other real estate investment association groups, and just listen and learn as much as you can. And what you'll find is that there'll be a segment of people that you won't have to tell them to do that. They will intrinsically want to do that, especially if they wake up. I call it the awakened agent. If they wake up and say, wow, am I going to sell real estate every day of my life for the next, 50 years? I need to either build a team or I need to buy assets so that I create passive income, right? From business ownership or through asset ownership. So the awakened agent is actually, they're at that stage to actually receive that information, right? And say, okay, hey, there's more to this game of real estate, and let me learn it. And so I encourage them to go and just learn. And then what happens is through that learning, you start just having conversations about it. So you just start talking about it, and you start talking to your clients about it. You start maybe working with a client, helping a client buy an investment property, and simultaneously you buying an investment property. And then here's what I hear all the time. Yeah, but I don't have the money. I don't have the resources. I got to my credit is bad. I'm self-employed. I don't have 2 years tax returns. And I say, no, stop, time out. Those are all just excuses, right? When you actually learn the game, you realize that specialized knowledge of what a deal is and how to find a deal is the most valuable component. And so if you could find a deal, and now you've built a database of people and relationships, and you know who wants to invest, you can bring them the deal. And instead of selling them the deal, you could partner together on that deal, right? Where you put up the deal and they put up the money. And you don't need to supply the cash, and you don't need to put up your credit. All you have to do is do the hard part, which is find the deal, right? And put up the deal. The money is the easy part, right? The hard part is finding the deal. So if you can get good at finding deals, if you can get good at understanding what deals are, if you can get good at just like that language, then you are the most important person in the totem pole, right? Because you control the asset, and the person that controls I used to think the person that had the goal make the rules. What was that old thing? Person that has gold make. I'm like, no, not in this business. Person who controls the deal, which I guess you could say is the gold, right? But the person that controls the deal makes the rules.
Right.
And so an agent is so well positioned to do that. And I'm on a mission to really help the agent understand where they are in the value chain, and also how they can create an annuity stream for themselves over time by owning properties with people, as opposed to just selling them those properties, right? It should just be a component of everything that they do. And it's not talked about enough. So we're going to change that.
So I know before we started this on a specific topic, you were talking a little bit about a webinar that you did, or a seminar you did on the income flip for the agent. Is that what you called it?
I call it the income flip.
Income flip. Can you talk a little bit about it? Because I know you just alluded to it a few minutes ago. Would love to hear more about that as well.
Sure. There's once you become what I call kind of like the awakened agent, right? Like, hey, there's more, there's got to be more to this, right? Game. Like every month I'm starting at zero. Like that doesn't feel good.
Right.
Although technically you're not starting at zero because you've built relationships. So your relationships are kind of an annuity stream, but still, right? You feel like you're starting at zero. Once you kind of are awakened that maybe there's a different way, a better way to do that, you start realizing, well, what's this game? What is the game? Like, how do I win the game? What are the rules of the game, right? And you realize, oh, there's definitely a way to win the game. Like the way to win the game is you have your household expenses. And if you can create business income and passive income that exceeds those household expenses, you've now won the game, right?
Right.
And so you can start seeing this differently than before. Like before, people start saying, well, okay, I've just fee for service. I'm going to help buyers and sellers and make money, right? But the problem is, yes, you can make money. And then what happens is people make money and then they increase their lifestyle. People make money, increase their lifestyle, and they're not thinking, well, wait a second. Let me kind of keep my lifestyle at a place that I'm comfortable with and keep making more money, and then invest that money in assets. And eventually what happens is I have more passive income and business income than expenses. And so that the income flip is a journey to help the agent understand how to go through that process and how to emotionally go through that process. Because it starts with thinking first and believing, and then understanding, that it's completely real and possible to do. Because ultimately, nobody's going to save the agent, right? Nobody's giving them a 401k. Nobody's giving them a pension.
Right.
Right. So you have to do this, right? Sooner rather than later. And so that's the game. Once you understand that that's the game, you could start playing the game. But if nobody tells you that's the game that's being played, you'll just stay on that little treadmill and
Right.
just keep doing deals.
The right transactional, relational, one at a time.
Yeah, and you're like, wait a second, like 20 years later, you wake up 30 years, and you're like, what do I have? I've got relationships, but I am the
Right.
economic engine. And like
Right.
this engine is wearing out because it's been working really hard for 20 years, right? And it's wearing out and I need some help. And so that's what the income flip is.
Gotcha. Well, I wanted to take a moment. Fraser, our production partner, is joining us here on Zoom. Can you let us know if there were any questions in the chat? And I'd love to open it up to see if anybody had some questions for Rob as well. To be sure, I've covered a lot of the topic, Rob, but was there anything else you wanted to talk about before I open that up?
Well, maybe Fraser has a question or two, but I go ahead, Fraser. I'm sure you have questions. Oh, you're on mute though, my friend.
Rob knows me so well. I show up with questions, right? The question I had, Rob, and I think this will be good for everybody who's listening, is you talk about the sort of why to position yourself. I mean, there's two things, right? There's the investing piece, and then there's the positioning yourself as an agent investor, frankly, to help all of your clients flip their income or discover financial freedom. Can you talk a little bit about what are the different ways that an agent gets benefit from going down this journey? You know, you've talked to me about the different benefits you've got in terms of business partners and partnerships and referral transactions, but an agent right now who is focused on their business, we really want them to see, you know, if you plug into this track, it will help do all the other things that you want to accomplish in your business as well. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think the biggest, Fraser, is that your clients start seeing you differently. They start seeing you as a wealth maker for their family. They stop viewing you purely as an agent, right? As a real estate agent that just helps do this transaction. And they see you as almost like a financial advisor when it comes to real estate. Right. And so I get clients calling me all the time about, hey, what do you think I should do with this refi? And I'm thinking about maybe keeping this property. And so now you've plugged into a deeper nerve with that client where you're helping essentially change their family's financial future. Right. So that's what I discovered as I look back. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm viewed completely differently. I'm in a category of one. Right? Because I'm helping them change their life. And then the other thing is it changes your life, right? Because it forces you to start thinking about how you're going to apply these things in your life as well. And so just starting to have the conversation in itself is the seed that starts the change. And then what happens is, because people are so, what I call it social currency, they're so appreciative of the fact that you're helping them build a financial future for their family, that they reward you with referrals. They reward you with just a deeper relationship, right? And you start having the conversation of, hey, maybe you should think about buying a rental property for one of your children so that when college comes around, that house is an asset that's specifically for them, right? Instead of a 529 plan, you can look at maybe buying a house, and there might be some more flexibility than the 529 plan, right? I look back now, how this 529 plan, I invested all this money over time. It's great. It got a good return, kind of like a, 11% return. I'd say great, but it's kind of restricted now. My little girl doesn't necessarily, we're not sure if she wants to go to college, right? And now I'm like, okay, well, what are we going to do, right? I had to learn the rules around that. You can give it to another family member if she doesn't take advantage of it. But if we had just bought a house, which we did, we bought a house specifically for her and said, okay, this is her house. And when she goes to college, we can use those proceeds. But along the way, I sold that house, right? And so I should not have sold that house. I look back and I'm like, God, that in itself would have, paid for college 10 times over. So anyhow.
Well, so that's fantastic. And I want to segue from that. You know, you talk about the frustrations or fears of real estate agents that you tap into with the income flip around, am I going to just be doing this over and over again, constantly working for time for dollars? What are some of the other frustrations that real estate agents have that can kind of be flipped, for lack of a better word, by positioning yourself as a agent investor? One thing that comes to mind, if this helps jog it, is like what you just said. Agents are a dime a dozen. There are 1,000 agents on every corner, and they don't necessarily earn a lot of professional respect from their networks because they think, I could sell my house. I can do all that stuff. Is that a big deal that you see, that agents who position themselves as agent investors sort of leapfrog and become something special, and that helps in terms of attracting referrals and attracting people into their sphere of influence?
I believe that all good marketing starts with identifying who you want to be a hero to, right? Who do you want to be a hero to? You could be the hero to your hyper-local neighborhood, right? And you now have elevated yourself above everybody else because they see you as the expert in that neighborhood, right? You can be a hero to seniors who need help with downsizing and right sizing, right? And you can be a hero to the real estate investor or to the family, right, that wants to build wealth in real estate. And so to answer your question kind of broadly, to be successful as an agent, you have to decide who your target market is and then pour the majority of your energy into that target so that you are the hero to that target. Being an agent investor is one of, I think, many. The reason though why I like the agent investor one is because it gets the agent to start thinking about how they do it for their life, right? And they could be a hero to themselves, because so many times you see people who are constantly giving and giving and giving and giving and giving to others, but you know, they haven't given to themselves. And it's like, no, wait a second, you have to also give to yourself in that process. And knowing this and learning this does that for you, right? It changes family trees, right? It changes everything. And so what's super cool, like I was thinking about this the other day, is that everybody on here is already everybody on here is already a business owner. Okay, let's just look at that. They already own a business. And when they actually take just a little slightly leap forward, they are also investors in that business, meaning that is the first place where they learn investing. Okay. Hey, how do I run a P&L, right? Do I run a P&L, right? Oh, I don't run a P&L. Like every little property is its own P&L, right? It's its own little business. Well, listen, you got a little business right now. It is your agent business, and learn to run it like an investor. If you were just think of yourself above the business and saying, if I am the investor in this business, does it function like a business, right? Does it have a marketing system? Does it have a marketing plan, right? Are there people there to help service that business? And maybe the people in the beginning is you, right? Which it is. But eventually you start realizing, no, I want to be the property manager of this business, right? I want to be the owner of this business, right? And I'm gonna let other people run that business. And so you start thinking about, okay, this is one of my first investments, and I've got to learn how to run it like an investment. But everybody runs it like a job. Right? That's the problem. So learning and going down this track, right, forces you to start thinking of yourself as an owner. And no different than buying a piece of real estate.
Right.
Why aren't you thinking about being an owner of your own business, right? That's where a lot of the learning starts. And then once you understand that, right, you got to be an owner over your household business. Then you got to be an owner of your business, and you got to be an owner of another asset. But everybody tries to just kind of like jump too fast without laying the right foundation first. And so, Fraser, you took me down a rabbit hole, man. I don't know what the original question was, but like oh yeah, because you were talking about, do you put yourself does it make you somehow separate you? And it does, right? But you could do that in other verticals as well.
Right. And so going back to Kelly's question, we were talking practical secret sauce, blueprint, etc. Just we didn't really, I guess, set the stage and say that for people who are here locally and across the nation, Rob and his merry men, or his merry band of grid owners or grid operators, run hyper local real estate investor associations in different markets, right? We have what, 10 in around DMV, something like that?
10 in the DMV, and then we have another 10 outside, Austin, Atlanta, like different places around the country right now.
So and to find information about this, you can go to gridinvestor.com. But Kelly, our branch in Fairfax, we are a grid chapter. And the reason I bring it up is because I think a lot of agents, you mentioned going and starting to connect with that culture, that tribe of people who are involved in investing and wholesaling and landlording and short-term rentals and house hacking and all this stuff. But question I have for you is, let's say, Grid produces videos, produces content about all of these things. If an agent wanted to, if you were advising a new agent, practically in terms of putting that flag up in their business and saying, I am an agent investor, and starting to attract people, and even if they have to kind of learn as they go, right, and be that kind of tour guide, is it as simple as sharing some videos that they can find about meetings at Grid, inviting people to Grid, interviewing active investors? Like, what could they do today to start testing your hypothesis that agents, that this will become very attractive and help them grow their sphere of influence?
They have to read one chapter ahead. Okay. Do you know what that reference is, by any chance?
Sure.
Like that.
Listen,
right
Bob, I was a teacher. Okay. I taught one chapter ahead.
Okay. There you go. So from Catch Me If You Can, right? That's where that reference is. And I think about when you were saying that, when the financial crisis occurred, I labeled myself as a short sale expert. Okay. And I was not a short sale expert, but what I did was I was always one chapter ahead. Right. And I was like, okay, well, what would somebody need to know about a short sale? Well, they need to know what a short sale is. So let me create some content. Let me go look at some content so they can go to our Grid library, our Grid YouTube channel, and go, okay, let me look at some content about wholesaling. And now they could hear it, they could learn it, right? And then they could explain it. And by the way, when you have to explain it, you learn, right? You start learning when you have to explain things. And so that's what I did in the short sale world. And I created a very specialized blog that was just like the 10 steps to short sale freedom. And literally like that thing was like, was like a money printing machine during that time. And I helped a lot of people out of really ugly, messy situations. And eventually I became the short sale expert, right? Because I had put myself in the path. And that's what somebody can do, Fraser, is they can say, okay, I need to understand this fundamental process of wholesaling. So let me go and look at the Grid videos on wholesaling. And I need to then understand how to estimate renovations. So let me go watch these videos on estimating renovations, right? And I don't think that they should share it, right? And I know you and I talked about that before. I think that they should take in the information and then have to explain it in their own voice, because the real learning happens at that point.
And one thing that you just said that occurred to me, and it might be the way that you and I can split the baby on this philosophical difference, is, we talk about using other people's money to buy real estate. You can really use other people's knowledge, right? So for instance, if you are a agent and you are intrigued, but you're not handy, you don't know rehab costs, there's somebody in your network who knows the heck out of rehab costs, right?
Oh, yeah.
You could interview a rehabber about rehab costs and share that, which is sort of, borrowing that person's knowledge and experience
Of
and
course.
positioning you, right?
Yeah, like I had no idea how to do a subject to. I'd never done a subject to. And so what we would do when that came up, because that's kind of like the creative financing side of real estate, is that I would bring in a friend that I knew crushed it at subject twos, and I just interview them. And that is a great model too. So if that person can be a good interviewer and ask great questions and facilitate a conversation and keep it interesting, yeah, they completely benefit from that. That'd be a great strategy, Fraser. I mean, that's essentially what we do with Grid. We just want typically the leaders to have a little bit more context themselves, because people really learn through stories. But if you're able to extract the story from the person that you're interviewing, that works just as well, for sure.
And so I guess Kelly, I have this final question. I did put out to our list, but I don't have questions coming in necessarily. One question is, you've identified a lot of reasons that people don't, that they might not do this positioning as being an agent investor. Are there any other reasons that you've seen over your time working with agents that we haven't mentioned, kind of like that objection that hasn't been answered yet?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that they don't see themselves as worthy of it for some reason. Almost like they don't deserve it, right? Maybe their financial life has been in chaos or a mess. And so they always say, well, I will invest when, right? And the problem with that is when never comes, right? You have to confront reality on that day and say, listen, like, yeah, my financials aren't great, but that's okay, because I'm committing today to really start learning this stuff, and it's going to change today. And everybody starts at like ground zero. Like, I mean, I remember going in and listening to other people about real estate investing, and I couldn't connect the dots. I was like, what are they talking about? Like, how do they find this? And how do they analyze the deals? It was like, but if you commit to that process and you just understand that it is your God-given right to learn it, and it's good for you and for your family, and that nobody starts with this knowledge, like everybody's at ground zero, you can then just say, okay, well, I'm just going to make a commitment to learn a little bit today, and then a little bit more the next day. And then, so they don't get started because they don't feel like they deserve it, and you deserve it. Like, if whoever's going to listen to it, you deserve it, right? And your clients deserve it, and your family deserves it, right? And you really do start looking at real estate from a 360 standpoint, as opposed to kind of like this like very narrow lens that most agents look at it. They're like, they look at a piece of real estate, if they're a listing agent, it's like, I'm going to list it, right? But when you understand like the 360 view, you can help your clients so much better, right? And super rewarding.
I can't thank you enough for your time today. I think this has been absolutely fantastic from the standpoint of just broadening the horizons for people to think out of the box about their own focus with their career. Some really good, I think, how-to strategies to get started. And I love the concept of Grid as a whole, because it puts people in a room, like you said, to talk about stories, to talk about things that they've done, things that they've tried, maybe things that have failed, what not to do, kind of things are just as important as those things to do. But I so appreciated hearing your story and your journey. And it's amazing that it started just from an interest in investing in real estate personally.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It's I think it started because like maybe a lot of people on here, craved the freedom to choose, right? I wanted choice, and choice was important. And I was like, okay, well, if choice is important, then I need to learn this stuff so that I have
Right.
the ability to choose, right? I want to be the captain of my own ship. And
Mhm.
so this information helps you do that. So that's it.
Mhm.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I know the snow really didn't come, but it's great to have everybody out here on Zoom.
Thanks, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Thank